see 4 o'clock now, so we will go ahead and call to order. We will start with a roll call. Anderson? Here. Bork?
Here.
Buchanan?
Here.
Clayton?
Here.
Grimm? No. Harrelson? Here. Cruzy?
Here.
Krylov? No. Murray? No. Peterson?
Here.
And Shetty.
Here.
Awesome.
Alrighty, and then on to the minutes from last month, from March 2nd. Did anybody have any comments or corrections there? No. Okay. In that case, can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Bork seconds.
Second. Okay. Anybody opposed? Alrighty, then the motion passes. We're rolling right along. We're on to announcements. We've got a few events this time, it looks like.
Yeah, we have no action items from the last meeting. And in terms of upcoming events, this Saturday at Robert A. Lee, our Green Iowa AmeriCorps team will be hosting Earth Expo. This is a tabling event where they invite area organizations that are involved with sustainability or climate or conservation to come and have a presence, and people get to cruise through and learn more about them. So it's open to the public if any of you would like to attend. And then, as you know, at the end of the month, on April 25th, we'll be hosting our Neighborhood Energy Blitz. This is the first one we're having on the west side of town, and there are still slots available if anybody would like to sign up to participate, either in the morning or the afternoon for that. Does anybody have any events coming up in the community that they'd like to share?
The Office of Sustainability on campus has a lot of events happening this month. It is Earth Month, and we always like to share our Earth Month hub, which is at sustainability.uiowa.edu/earth-month, or there's a tab at the top of our page if you get there. We do have 3 events that are community-wide during Earth Week. On Monday the 20th from 3:30 to 5:30, we're doing a garlic mustard pull and trash cleanup on the east side of the Hampshire Bridge is where everybody's meeting. It's the Campus Arboretum area. On Wednesday, Earth Day, the 22nd, we have a collaboration with the engineering school, which is the Siemens Center. So there's an Earth Day celebration. There will be tabling and dancers and ukuleles and kids, and they're expanding their pollinator garden at the engineering school there. And then Friday, the 24th, is Arbor Day, and we are having another Miyawaki forest planting at the College of Public Health. That's the southeast side of the building there. That will be on Friday and Saturday. So 1 to 4 on Friday and 10 to 2, I believe, on Saturday.
Cool.
Yeah.
Was the Miyawaki Forest from last year the first time they had done that?
Mhm.
Any word on how that's doing?
I actually haven't been there, but it's coming up. It's budding out. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah,
I did that
haven't
one
seen it.
last year. It was lots of fun.
Yeah, it was a great event.
Burr Oak Land Trust is doing a backyard biodiversity project. Basically, they're giving away shrubs to Iowa City residents. You can register once per household, and then each household can get up to 5 shrubs. And it's April 17th from 2 to 6 p.m. You have to register ahead of time. I know you were involved in getting that started, so there's a link to register. I don't know the best way to share it out though.
If you email it to me, I can email it to everyone else.
Okay, sounds good.
And to give credit where credit is due, I did not actually start the shrubs. Burr Oak did that. As those of you who've been on the commission for a while might recall, they applied for a grant last year to support that activity. And at the closeout of the climate action grants, we reached out to them and said, that was really great. Why don't we save you the trouble of applying for another climate action grant? Can we just set this up as a regular partnership? So we're funding those shrubs that are going out.
Okay. That does it for events. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, Happy Earth Month. This is always, I feel like, the most the most events of the year that we have usually. So, okay, cool. So on to new business. Exciting stuff this month. We have Ann Russett joining us from planning.
Anne is our senior planner, and we invited her to come today because we have had an exciting development south of town. I'll get past the minutes here, where I guess there's been a proposed rezoning in which will be the first development in our form-based code. And since many of you were not on the commission when the form-based code was first discussed, I asked Anne if she could come in and talk a little about it and how it fits with the community's climate action goals, especially related to housing density and walkability and bikeability in neighborhoods. So, Anne, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. It's fun to talk about this project because we have been working kind of on the policy side and the regulatory side for many years, creating the ability for developers to build this type of housing in our community. And now we have our first actual project where a developer has come to the city and wants to work with us on this type of development. So this has been in the works for many years. I think the plan piece of it was adopted in 2021. And the zoning regulations were adopted in 2022, I want to say. And the whole goal of the form-based code policy, the land use policy, and the regulations is really to encourage a diversity of housing types in our community, to really make sure we have an interconnected street network that allows all types of mobility, from walkers to bikers to even cars and hopefully transit. And also provide those connections to those existing neighborhoods. So this is an infill site. It's, if you can try to get your bearings, on the east side of kind of the pink and purple and kind of gray colors is Weatherby Park. So we're talking about land on the south side of town. Gilbert Street is off the map, but it's to the west. And then Sandusky, maybe I can show this here. So Sandusky is right here, if you're familiar with Sandusky. This is Weatherby Park. We have McAllister Boulevard to the south, and then Gilbert Street to the west. This is Sand Prairie here. And this is private land with homes. So it's completely surrounded by development. And it's totally vacant, so they're going to be building streets and homes. Just one thing, this is the rezoning exhibit. One thing that I wanted to point out here is that we were encouraging, as part of the planning process, no matter where you were in this form-based code area, that every resident would have something that they could walk to, whether it be a park or open space or even a small neighborhood commercial area. And so this is the open zone here. And this is a zoning designation that does allow non-residential uses. So the current developers are proposing residential in this area, but over time, uses could change and someone could buy one of those buildings and convert it into a non-residential use. So do you want to go to the next slide, Sarah?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you let me know when you want me to scroll down.
If you can maybe zoom out a little bit.
Yeah. Is that good?
Yeah, that works. So this is the preliminary plat. So this is the process by which we start to create the streets and the lots and the stormwater systems that you can see right here. The sidewalk network. So all of that is shown on this exhibit here. A few things that I just wanted to point out. A big part of this plan was extending the existing streets that exist to provide those connections to from this new community to the existing community. We also wanted to make sure that there was access to Weatherby Park. So you'll see there's lots of pedestrian connections to this existing trail network that's in the park. And so they're all kind of all at key points along this new street. Here, this was also a really important piece that the city wanted to ensure that as you're in this neighborhood, you can see Weatherby Park, you can see that it's easily accessible and that you know it's there and it's not hidden behind a bunch of houses. So there's more pedestrian connections as you head north. This is really a parks-rich neighborhood. You have Sand Prairie here, you have Napoleon Park to the west, you have the Sycamore Greenway, you have Terry Trueblood. So with these paths, these wide side paths and sidewalks, this neighborhood will have easy access to those parks to the west. One thing that I wanted to say about Sand Prairie is that we've worked really closely with the Parks Department on this. And maybe you guys have talked about Sand Prairie at some of your other meetings, but Sand Prairie is really a preserve, and it's kind of a special park in our park system because it's really biodiverse, and there's not many places like this even within Johnson County. There's really sandy soil, there's endangered species in this area. The Parks Department is working with a professor out of Drake University now to kind of see what's all in that area and get a better understanding of the plant species and even the animal species that live there. And so for this area, we were really concerned about, we didn't want the development to impact the park, and we didn't want it to be even more accessible, because just walking through it can damage the soil. So as part of this, the developer will be building a fence along the backs of these lots to make it clear that this is private, this is the public preserve here. There are entrance points along Covered Wagon over here, and I think even an access point off of Gilbert Street. But we didn't want to increase access like we did with Weatherby Park over here. There was this Outlet F is one piece that the developer is going to be dedicating to the city for a small expansion of Sand Prairie Park, where there's some additional prairie remnants in this area that will become part of the park with this development. So what we're hoping here is that we get a diversity of housing types, we make it easy for people to get around, we make it easy for people to access amenities like parks, and maybe even in the future commercial uses. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I've got a couple that might be helpful. For those who aren't familiar with the terms, could you explain the difference between a sidewalk and a side path?
Yeah, good question. So this is, it's hard to kind of see on this map, but sidewalks typically 5 feet in width. The side path is usually 8 to 10 feet. So our side path, this one's an 8-foot side path that will run along the northern side of the extension of Sandusky in this area. And we specifically chose this side of Sandusky as opposed to the southern side of Sandusky because of all the driveways. All of these homes are going to have front access points. This side path will allow fewer interruptions for people on their feet or on their wheels. Obviously, they're going to have to cross these streets, but there won't be a bunch of driveways every few feet. And it connects all the way to Weatherby.
So side paths are purposely designed to accommodate multimodal travel, both walkers and bikers and whoever else is on tiny wheels.
Yes. Scooters.
Yeah. Earlier you talked about housing density and a diversity of housing types. Could you take us through a little, what are townhomes, what are single family homes in this development?
Yeah. So the kind of lowest intensity housing types are at the north in the pink. These will all be either what we call house small, so detached single family homes, or duplexes. So you can see kind of the duplex lots at the corners. we're going to have, I can't remember. Let me look at my. Here. All the yellow kind of colors, these are going to be townhomes. So you can, I don't know if you can see that in the back, but these are kind of yellow. All of those will be townhomes here too. And then we're gonna have some, these are what we're calling house scale townhomes, because there's maybe 2, 3, 4 attached, whereas these are more block scale. You might get up to 5 or 6 attached units in this area here. And then we're gonna have cottage court units over here next to the park. And so cottage courts are multiple units on one lot. They're usually small standalone homes that open all up onto a small green space area. So there'll be 6 to 9 homes on each of these lots, just real small homes.
Like-
If you've ever seen The Big Lebowski, the dude lives in a cottage court.
That's one of my favorite movies, and I did not realize that. Yeah.
Is it like tiny homes then?
Yeah, they're
Tiny
kind of like
houses?
tiny homes.
So
Yeah.
they'll be very affordable?
That's part of the goal here too, is that, I mentioned we have some house small, we also have a house large. So we're restricting the size. So the price per square foot is still gonna be the same, but since they're smaller units, they're hopefully at a lower price point, and more affordable, but not income restricted. Yeah. Yeah.
How close is it to the nearest bus stop?
Oh, that's a good question. There is a bus stop on McAllister and Gilbert, so they're either gonna have to take Sandusky to the north and head west onto Gilbert, or go to the south. There is a stop at Terry Trueblood that may be the closest, depending on if you live down here, probably.
Okay.
If you live up here, it might be further north on Gilbert.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Can you talk a little bit more about that retail possibility in
Yeah.
that space?
So it's optional. It's kind of a flexible zone, whereas the idea is you create a structure, and over time the use can change depending on who owns it and how they want to use the building. In other parts of the form-based code area, we have Main Street areas where commercial is actually required. This is more optional. So the idea is Navigate's going to build these structures. For the time being, that's probably going to be residential, but maybe in the future it could change. The code, at least I think what we can only control so much, and we can control the zoning, and we don't want we want there to be kind of in strategic areas the ability to do commercial if there's a demand for it or an interest in it.
Are there other plats in Iowa City that have a Main Street form like you mentioned, or is that in just smaller towns?
Well, the Main Street is actually planned for an area further south of here, off of McAllister. So our whole planning area, when we were kind of developing the form-based code and the form-based land use policy, it included land off of Sycamore Street and McAllister over by Alexander Elementary. So all of that land south of here is included in the planning boundary. And we identified one Main Street area, which does require ground floor commercial, and even the street typology is a little bit different in that area because we want on-street parking, and we want wider sidewalks and street trees, and so those are the things that we kind of thought about as we were developing the plan. But yeah, so the Main Street is in this area. There's multiple open zone areas, but there's just one Main Street.
Thanks.
This
Yeah.
is kind of like the Peninsula neighborhood is what I'm thinking of, because there's like the Ramen Belly, and kind of like a mixed use situation. Maybe that's the question there, is like, what's the difference then between like a mixed use neighborhood and like form based, what you're talking about?
Yeah, so the peninsula is probably the most comparable example to what we're trying to create here. I guess the difference, we have mixed use. I think in terms of like thinking about form-based zones versus more traditional zones, is that we care maybe less about the housing types. We want more diversity, whereas traditional zones historically have been more exclusive, single family only, that type of thing. Whereas with form-based, we want to think more about the form and keeping the scale similar so everything kind of works together. But we don't care if there's 3 units in it or 5 units in it in the building. We just want to make them all kind of similar in scale so it all kind of works together, if that makes sense.
Well, I will note in our office, we're excited about this proposal because it does check so many boxes, but also I will say the developer who's brought it forward is our highest participant in our HERS grant program. As far as we can tell, all of the homes they're constructing or have constructed in the last year have met that 52 or higher score threshold. So there's some, I feel hopeful about the energy efficiency that may end up going into this neighborhood as well.
It's good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Anne,
Yeah,
so much
thank
for your
you.
time.
Thanks.
If you find you have questions after this meeting as you're digesting this information and you want me to pass them along to Anne, I'm happy to do so. Otherwise, we will let her go out and enjoy the sunshine today.
And this is on the council's agenda for tomorrow. They're gonna be considering the rezoning at least. All right.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Let's back up to our agenda.
Guess I really have to sit at that. I could just stay over here. Next one is about the Grow Solar program.
So this is just a small note to start, but after the completion of the Regional Climate Action Plan, which we do have someone, I will say, from ECOG coming to talk about that plan with you, I believe in May. At the end of it, the committee sat down and said, now that we've got the plan, what can we do to start moving some things forward? And the idea of hosting another solar group buy came up and was the action we decided to pursue. For those of you who weren't in the city at the time, the city has hosted, along with the county, a Grow Solar Lynn and Johnson County initiative for several years, and then before that, the program is known as Solarize. And basically, the way it works is people sign up for the program. They use the designated installer. The installer is chosen by submitting an RFP that shows some preliminary pricing. And depending on how many people join, the more you get, the deeper the discount is for participants. So there's a price break at an installation of 50 kilowatts of capacity, and then another, I think, at 150, and there's a third tier as well. And so the idea is that basically it's a way of working together to harness economies of scale to drive down the price of solar. We liked this as an idea for something to pursue regionally, both because, as you know, the solar tax credits were expiring, and so we wanted to be able to provide some continued incentive for people to install solar while also helping support the solar industry through a period of a bit of a transition, right? Much like with EVs, what we saw with solar is a bunch of people installing ahead of the tax credits expiring, and then because of that, now you get kind of a lull where there aren't as many people signing up. The other reason to host something like this is that although the solar tax credits have gone away for residents, because of a weird way the law was written, they are still in place for businesses through this year and nonprofits that want to put solar energy on their rooftops. And there's a lot of confusion around that, understandably. So hosting this program is also a way of making sure all the businesses and nonprofits in our area get it. Because this is a regional effort, it is going to be not just Johnson and Lynn County, which I said correctly this time, but also the 6-county area served by the Regional Climate Action Plan, which is great because it's going to be the first time residents in those counties have an opportunity to participate in something like this. And it's great for us because it increases the likelihood that we'll have enough people sign up to realize those points where we can get a deeper discount on the solar. So that is it in broad strokes. The program is set to launch at the end of this month. We're working with the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, which is the same organization that has organized these in the past. They always like to launch the program on Earth Day, so you'll see some information go out about it then. I wanted to give you all a heads up and just let you know that in the months ahead, we'll be providing little updates here and there as to how the program is progressing. The first presentation that's going to happen in our Johnson County is going to happen here in Iowa City. Big Grove has graciously agreed to host it for us, and we're going to be doing that on May 26th. If anybody has an interest in solar for themselves or just seeing how the program runs. The way those programs do, they call them solar power hours, and they have a community participant from a past year give a presentation about how the program works, and then the solar installer is there to answer questions that people might have. But one of the reasons it's structured that way is so that people don't feel like they're getting a hard sell. They're getting real information from another resident. Much the same way we like to have EV car shows, like give you a chance to talk to an EV car owner and not just someone trying to sell it to you. And we are actually very fortunate in our office because Daniel Bissell, our climate action analyst, is himself a former participant in this program and now is on to his second home in which he has installed solar arrays. So he is going to be giving the community presentations for Johnson County, and we're very excited about that. Those are, I think, the big things to know for now. The only other one would be that the program essentially runs through September, and then all of the solar needs to be installed, I think, by February of next year. At which point, all of the participants will be sent a refund check based on how many people had signed up in the program over the course of the rest of this year. As I said, we'll be coming to you in the months ahead and just giving you little updates on the program, but we wanted to let you know that this is on the horizon and we're very excited about it. So, does anybody have any preliminary questions? We're just overwhelming you with information today. Yeah.
What are the other counties that are eligible?
Oh gosh, you are going to test me this way. I know Washington, Benton, Cedar counties, and then, it's terrible I don't know them all, but I do know them all, I just can't think of them off the top of my head.
Okay.
Points north of here. Any other questions?
Is this something you expect to happen annually moving forward?
You know, that's a great question. We did run them annually for a while. The very first one we had was the largest group buy sale in MREA's history, which was really fun. Over the course of the next subsequent years, we saw less and less participation. And so the last time we ran it, I think was in 2022, and made the decision at that time to kind of take a break from it. We felt like we'd maybe saturated the market and we wanted to let some demand build up. And of course, the IRA was on the horizon and we thought that'd be a better discount. So this is the first time we're taking it up again since then. I would say it depends on how many people sign up. In some ways, you don't want to do it year after year because you kind of want to create that interest in participating. But I guess we'll see where we're at the end of the year. I will say, from my perspective, I mean, I think I've laid out all the really great reasons that, I think it's good to have a program like this, especially this year. But I will also say one of the benefits to us is that we're able to collect great data as a part of this program. Like, we know how many people come to the solar power hours. We know how many of them go on to get personalized estimates for putting solar on their homes. We know how many of those go on to actually sign a contract and get a solar array. And as part of the program, those that don't get asked, like, what was the top reason for you not signing up for solar? And that data has been really helpful for us in thinking through what the barriers are to solar adoption in our area. So lots of great benefits to it.
Is so in prior years it was just Johnson and Lane counties. Going to 6 counties, are they still just looking at one installer, and does that change the type of company that can propose to such a big area? Or
This is also a great question. There is one installer. Well, let me revise that. One of the concerns we had thinking about this program and what a tough year it is for solar is that we don't want to be in the business of picking a winner such that whoever else applies then goes under. And so one of the things we did was create a multiplier in the RFP that said if you apply in collaboration with another solar installer, you'll get extra points on the scoring. There are a number of other little multipliers that are on there. Some of the ones that I remember MREA putting in is if you're a first-time applicant, you get extra points that way. If you're a woman or minority-owned business, that gets extra points. So there are lots of ways of just zhuzhing it a little. We also reached out to all the local solar installers and let them know about this opportunity, and particularly let them know they had the option of applying in collaboration with others, so that they were well informed and were able to have lots of discussions beforehand. Because there were a number of installers who applied that had worked directly with the city or that I had an existing relationship with through my work with the city, I did recuse myself from voting. 'Cause I just never want to cast a vote against a local installer or for one over another if it can be avoided. So I don't actually know who's gotten the contract yet. I won't know until the official announcement comes out. But I do know that we had a number of local installers apply, and to my knowledge, I don't think we had any national chains apply, which is great because, of course, we would really like this to be a support for our local industry. Yeah. Cool. Well, we look forward to reporting out on it in the months ahead. We'll see how it goes, and we'll be sure to keep you updated.
okie doke. Then we have a little bit of old business to catch up on as well. So we've got a little update on climate action grants.
I promise I'm about to stop talking and we won't get to talk a lot more after this. Just a little update on our climate action grants. Our application period closed last week. I am tickled to report we have gotten more climate action grant applications this year than we have in any year previous. And I want to give a nod to our climate action staff that worked diligently to set up some information sessions, some that were targeted specifically toward businesses. Well, one was targeted toward businesses, one was targeted toward nonprofits. Diane worked very hard on developing a toolkit for applicants that didn't just go through the scoring, but identified the types of projects that have been funded in the past or that could be funded in the future. And I think all of these things work together not only to get us more applications than we've had in the past, but also the quality is really great on these applicants. I think the committee is going to have its work cut out for it, scoring them. There's some just excellent and very exciting projects that have been proposed. That being said, we need 2 to 3 volunteers from this august body to serve on that committee and help us choose who's going to get funding. And so I wanted to see if anybody would like to put their hands up to help us score those grant applications.
Before I do, a quick question. What is the time commitment?
That's a good question. How long it takes you to review the grants, I suppose, depends on how fast a reader you are. The meetings in the past, usually there have been 2 one-hour meetings. This year, the first meeting we're hoping will be 90 minutes in hopes that we could maybe get through them all. But of course, we said that before we knew we got so many in, so who knows. But I will say, In aid of this undertaking, Danny has developed a cover sheet that he is going to put on the front of every grant application before it gets sent out to the committee that highlights the key parts of the application and includes a scoring rubric on it in which we will be pre-filling two of the categories, scoring categories. One is just greenhouse gas reductions. We calculate that for the applicants each year. And then award points based on that. And the other is connection to the climate action plan. And we have a way of scoring that so it'll be nice and consistent. And then the job of the committee is really to determine how it aligns with the community goals and the goals of the city in terms of its other, the climate action plan, but also the strategic plan. So our hope is that these cover sheets will make it a little easier to just compare them at a glance and try to assign scores.
Would this happen within the next month or so, or?
Emma, are you graduating and leaving us?
Yes.
In theory, we like to have all of them out by May, like to notify who's been given an award or not.
Mm-hmm.
But I would hate to run up against your graduation obligations. But it's up to you.
Okay.
I'll just say I did it last year, and it was actually quite fun to see all the applications that came in. The hardest part was getting the committee all together. So
Are the
having
meetings-
those two meetings, you know.
I guess that's
was
my
the
one
hardest
question.
part.
Is it like after work hours sort of thing?
Traditionally, they've been during the workday.
Okay.
But we could look at being flexible on that.
Okay.
We could, if it would be helpful, try to set up a hybrid meeting where you could zoom in for it. Would that be helpful? Maybe, I don't know.
Probably up to who's
Who has on it, yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, let's do that first. Let's score these grants.
I would like to, but yeah, put me down for now.
Tell you what, when I was talking to Danny, he said try to get two and a third as an alternate. Why don't we put you down? And then the idea is we'll get three of you to sign up to help score them. And then if we can get schedules aligned for two, those are the two that'll go. And then the third, can provide some comments outside of the meeting. Sound good?
Cool.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Is that 3 people? I only heard 2.
That's
1, 2.
Buchanan and Anderson and Peterson. Thank you. You guys are gonna have fun.
It
They
is
are
good.
great applications.
Question on the rubric.
Mhm.
So there's two areas that, you'll have scores in, and then there'll be the third one, which is more subjective about the goals and such. Are they going to be percentage-wise carry any weight? Like,
Oh, yes.
okay,
It's actually, I think we're scoring 2 out of 6 fields. So there are 4 fields. The 2 we're scoring amount to 35% of the
Okay.
total score. And we do that just for, we're just doing the technical end of it. And so the majority of the scoring actually will be done by the committee itself.
okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Sounds good.
Cool. Well, thank you to those of you who signed up to participate. John, were you tempted?
No, I wasn't, sadly enough. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the farm, so the warm weather in the farm. And I'm going to DC in May as well, so I gotta make sure I have a block there. Lobbying for the farm bill, so, yes.
Well, we will trust you to do good work in other corners. So thank you very much to the 3 of you who signed up. We'll have Danny getting in contact with you this week then. Cool. All right, this is where I get to stop talking. We saw the Pearl presentation last month, and I know we had some preliminary discussion there. I did want to circle back to see if we could capture some takeaways or thoughts that you've had as you've continued to think about it for the month. You don't have to say anything, but we just want to make sure there's an opportunity to hear back from you. And then I can tell you a little about next steps in terms of what we're thinking. including if you all are like, we hated it, you can be like, well, next step is back to the drawing board. Any thoughts or takeaways from the discussion last month?
I wish it would have been more capsulized. So in other words, shorter, you know, for each of the topics that were talked about. That the caveat that is raised for me was the weighting of, you know, the formula, because you know, that's very subjective, and it's, you know, I looked into a scoring that was done on a different thing some time ago, and which it was saying Iowa was the best place to live in. And then, you know, there was a whole bunch of different scores for different categories, and one was about the internet. So I started digging down, okay, this was not in the article, this was, you know, I had to go deeper. So then the weighting of it turned out to be the ability for major companies to have high speed in Iowa. Well, that meant Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Des Moines. They were all heavily able to, they were able to get high speed. And that carried such a weight that it was then imposed all across Iowa. So, you know, we have rural areas that don't have internet. So, you know, so looking at this way, well, then to me it went, well, no, that's not right, you know. And then the other categories as well, as you're going through, raised huge questions. And then another explanation further along in investigating said, this is not a scientific study. This is done for entertainment purposes. So it's like, and this was a campaign issue raised by one of the candidates. So, you know, in other words, yeah, that's a caveat for me about what weight and how do they determine that for these different ratings. I don't think there's anything, you know, like criminal or anything. No. But how scientific and rational is it? Sorry, I talked too long. Talked too much.
I think that lack of transparency was concerning to me too. It just like this like black box of scoring made it seem like a little arbitrary, like this number that they're giving you. It seems like it's it's not that useful of a tool in benchmarking because you don't know what you're comparing against exactly, or they said you can't really use it to like you don't know what improvements are going to lead to what point improvements. So it seems like more of a marketing thing and less of a useful tool for people to use, is the sense I got.
Yeah, I guess for me, that's okay because the goal is to help me market my home. And so as long as it's applied consistently across different homes, which I think it will be, I understand, it would be nicer to know, that would be better, but...
I guess my other concern was that it wasn't being applied consistently across homes because they were kind of pulling what data was available.
Fair.
Whereas some people will have gone through and updated line for line. Yes, I have LED bulbs in my house, but that's not going to be in my score. So you might not be comparing real numbers if the people haven't been looking at their score and keeping their thing up to date. So I don't know how real it actually is.
Well, what is real is, you can call Mid-America and ask them, okay, on this lot in the city of Iowa City, this house, what is their average electric bill? And they'll tell you, and then the square foot of the house. So you can kind of do a little bit of just basic checking yourself if you're a consumer looking for a house to buy.
And I think that's probably the kind of public data that goes into the scoring in the first place, I think.
Yes.
If I'm guessing, yeah.
No, it sounds like a, yes.
So I wasn't here last time, but in looking at the Pearl scores, is the intention to maybe offer incentives from the city to people that are renovating homes?
I think
Similar to hers, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the HERS incentive goes to the builder,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't go to the homeowner. So one of the questions we've got to figure out is what's motivating, right? We don't have the ability to give direct grants to homeowners to make these upgrades, right? And so I think the Pearl score is seen as a way of, if we can't incentivize it that way, of helping make sure that they are capturing the value of those investments, which is where the marketing end comes in, right? They're well equipped to be able to market that home to future homeowners who may not know what a heat pump is or why it's important to put one in. Or one of the things we've heard consistently from realtors in the area is that homes getting solar panels don't seem to get appraised appropriately, like people don't know how to sell them. And in fact, part of the way Pearl came on our radar was in talking to realtors, saying the thing that has helped them sell homes where people have made an investment in solar is looking at a Pearl rating and having a Pearl certificate there for prospective home buyers.
So in their mind, does the score mean something, I guess?
I think so.
Is it just higher is better, or is there like certain thresholds they're trying to hit?
I think your point is well made, that like if you've invested a lot in raising your score and nobody else has, like how accurate is it in comparison to these others? But the value may actually be in being able to say, we've made these investments, we have the record of it, this is something we've cared about the house, and you should, and therefore you can care about it too. In this way, I think it's actually very similar to the HERS scores, in that not all homes actually now 1 out of 3 homes built in Iowa City last year got a HERS score, which was really great. But not all homes get a score. Most people buying the homes don't know how that score compares to the others around them outside of what we tell them, and yet having that certificate signals somehow that it is a higher performing or higher value home, if that makes sense. I am not a real estate mogul, so in some ways some of this is theoretical for me, but
I think that makes sense too, like using it as like a before and after comparison on the same home is maybe more valuable than, cause you're totally right that like me comparing to my neighbor who hasn't put in any information is like kind of useless, because of course they have a lower score, but that doesn't mean they don't have solar panels, they just haven't put it into the system. But whereas if I've got my before score and my after score, I can show you all the cool things that I did or something.
Yeah, that's
that
true.
kind of
Compare against yourself.
Yeah.
And in that way it is
the realtor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say in that way it's like more of a useful benchmark, but then again, like I still can't grasp like what 200 points means. I guess.
Yeah. They do define that like that 500 is a silver score, and then I think 750 is something, and 1,000 is the max, but essentially that would be impossible or a zero,
Like net
a net zero home or whatever, but, or something along those lines. I forget.
We should try
So
to
they
get
do
it for
have-
the net zero home that the students are building. To see how
There
it
it is.
scores.
Yeah.
I don't see any problem if consumers want to go ahead and purchase, that information from the company. I would hesitate on the city funding that company to make those investments cheaper for consumers in Iowa City. In other words, not to put public money into it. That would be, you know.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I asked her was like, what's the avenue that was most helpful, or I don't know, the vector, I guess, that we should take the most. And I think the thing in her answer that stood out to me was realtors, because they interact with both the buyers and the sellers, so they're getting the word out so much, and the builders as well, and contractors, and just like the whole community. So I could see kind of maybe an education campaign to realtors or something.
So it would be an endorsement of that company.
On the program, at least, similar to how we did with the HERS, bringing in. Didn't we do something like that?
Yeah, usually when we do a realtor training, we'll have them talk about a number of tools that can be used to sell homes that have had these kinds of investments made in it. And we use the official, or the trainer we bring in uses the official National Association of Realtors framework to do so, and they are very clear about not endorsing particular companies.
That would be okay with me.
One possibility, so I just want to make sure I'm capturing the consensus in the room, is that it seems like the numbers feel a little funny, like we understand it to be a marketing tool. I'm guessing others feel similarly to John, that we don't want the city investing money in this company in some way. Is that about right?
What would that look like?
You know, that's a funny thing, because, like, there's actually nothing for us to spend money on with it, in terms of giving money to Pearl. It sounds like the realtor can buy a marketing package from them when the time comes to sell the home, but we would not do that. We would just perhaps provide some assistance for homeowners to sign up for the program. And what I will say, what I have been thinking about since watching it, because I also have kind of I don't know exactly what the numbers mean, and I don't know how motivated people might be to put the numbers in themselves. It seems to me that it's a tool, and what you need with a tool like this is someone to help engage people in using it. And so where I could see the city spending some funding could be to get an energy navigator for folks who want to participate in it, who will help collect the information and get it uploaded to the site and say, here's how much this improved your score. The report that's being generated says these are, the next steps you could take to increase the energy efficiency of your home. Here are the folks in our area who do that work. Once upon a time, utilities used to have these kinds of energy coaches, and then as their programs got scaled down, they no longer do. I reached out to a community member who had done that work for utilities not in our area, but elsewhere, to take a look at the program, and kind of floated the idea of, well, I just wanted him to take a look at Pearl and let me know what he thought, if he thought it was a legitimate tool or not. But I could see us, if we wanted to test it out, I think we could do so at a fairly low cost by hiring an energy navigator who could work with Iowa City residents that sign up to participate in the Grow Solar program to make sure their solar array, at the very least, gets registered so that they have a way of getting that properly appraised when they go to sell their home. That's a nice value add that we can add to that program. And it's based on the feedback we've heard from realtors about the properties not being properly appraised. And then let him have a go at it as somebody who's trained to do this and say, we added your solar panels, it raised your score this much. Incidentally, here are 3 other energy efficient things you could do. And we could see over the course of this little test period how many people take him up on that, how many people go ahead and put their own numbers in and feel like it's valuable. And if at the end of it, we're just not seeing a lot of participation, then that's fine and we can move away from it. And if we do see a lot of participation, or like we hear a lot of feedback saying this is great, can we do more of it, then we could think about how we could develop a fuller program around it. I don't know, what do you all think of that idea?
I think that's a fine idea, personally. I mean, it doesn't sound like we're, to your point, necessarily endorsing anything per se with taxpayer money or anything like that. I wasn't here last week either. I remember when we first started talking about this, and in my head at the time, it was like, oh, okay, I own a home. I want to find a way to increase the energy efficiency of it. Is this a tool for that? Yes and no, it sounds like. It sounds like what it's a better tool for is, solving that problem that you guys were talking about where, there's no way to quantify, I have solar panels on my home, I'm going to sell my home. There's no way, like, reliably to get that factored into the equation, right? Like, it seems more geared towards that. And if we can incentivize people in that direction of like, well, it's actually good for you to put solar panels on your home because this is a way it'll get recognized. We're helping that along. I don't see any problem with that personally. And that, what you're talking about, it sounds like a good venue for getting that ball rolling. So that's just my thought.
Yeah, I agree, and I was even kind of thinking too about like a less formal, like maybe an ambassador kind of group as well of people who have used the program on their own home or something, and whether that's tied in with climate ambassadors or as a separate thing, kind of like you mentioned the EV car show earlier, like, we have EV drivers do the car show to show other people how that works. Like, I've been using the Pearl app. I got my score up by like almost 20 points now, just by like, I have an induction stove, like it's really, whatever. So I'd be happy to go, talk to a realtor about it or whatever, things like that. Could be a similar kind of thing. I don't know.
It doesn't sound like it's like a scientifically rigorous, like what you were saying, like benchmarking. And I would, if I was trying to like reliably and rigorously improve things in my home, like I would probably not use this tool.
Right.
It sounds like.
Sure. I guess to me, I've been thinking about it more as I am in, like, I read a lot about the climate space. We're all invested, right? But so I know that it's good for me to change my house over from a gas dryer and a gas water heater and a gas stove over to electric, appliances. I do all those things. That costs me not an insignificant amount of money, but then I go to sell my home and I try to convince buyers that, like, look, isn't this cool? And I just went through this like last year and I get nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So it's more of like a social campaign.
You're like de-incentivized at that point.
Exactly.
Even though you care about it, you're like, well, I just spent all this money. This doesn't math so good for me.
Right. So I guess I'm viewing it more as like a way to help shift the social conversation around like what we value in a home, if that makes sense. And maybe it's because this is a private company doing it and they've got their proprietary formula that they don't want to share, which I suppose I understand, right? I don't know how
I guess the question
to
would be-
incentivize transparency around that, but
I guess the question would be: is there a different tool that's better than this one that kind of meets the same things that we're talking about?
that is a good question.
I'm not aware of that.
Is anyone aware of competitors?
We do have our eyes out, and I want to say before we make a decision about growing anything, like I want this to not be the only thing we look at. I think that's fair to residents and fair to us and all that. We haven't found something that's structured similarly. I think that's part of the tricky bit. Like, I think we're not going to be comparing apples to apples, but we're going to try to level that as much as we can. We've been looking at national green building standards as one possibility. And looks like we have a member of the public who
Hello. So I'll introduce myself very briefly. My name is Tom Martinez. I work for Greater Iowa City, which is the Chamber of Commerce. I work as a community and workforce development. So I'm brand new to this world, but Pearl does have like a white paper that explains their methodology for developing the score. It is 25 pages long and it looks pretty dense. But what I do for Greater Iowa City is a lot of my role is like research. So I'd be happy to like read it and then maybe I can, send Sarah kind of my notes and stuff and maybe just add to the conversation a little bit. Like I said, it's a bit long but I'd be happy to. My background is in data, data basically. So happy to help out. But yeah, just kind of I'm just kind of making the rounds. It's a new role for me, so it's about a month and a half in. So hello everyone, it's good to meet you all. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Yeah, I don't think they mentioned their white paper in the presentation.
Well, they do.
They said they had
Yeah.
secret sauce.
I know, exactly.
They didn't realize that's not a goodie.
Yeah. So I'm sure like this specific like factors and weighting that if that's in the white paper, then yeah, it's not very secret at all. So
Yeah. Well, having a sense of a methodology would be helpful.
absolutely. Yeah.
I will say, for what it's worth, I've also struggled a little with the numbers, but the longer I'm in the climate space, the more I think sometimes we fall victim to overthinking it, that we turn it into like a technical exercise when at the end of the day the base question is, does it consume less fossil fuels? If yes, we should be doing it, right? And I think in particular, because we had a very simple worksheet that we've taken around the community for the last few years that's like, here's how you sequence the next 10 years of home improvements. And one of the things we did in developing it was say, this is what you do year 1, this is what you do year 3, here's what you do before the end of the next 5 years. And one of the things we realized is that unless you are very wealthy, not very wealthy, but unless you're relatively well off and you are just looking to always improve your home, most people are not going to replace an appliance until it breaks. Like very few people are going to take out a working furnace to replace it with a heat pump. And so having like a score attached to it that says you get 100 points if you get a heat pump versus 50 points if you put in an induction stove, to me, it doesn't matter because people just aren't going to do it until it breaks anyway. But what does matter is that they hear heat pump 20 times before they go and make that decision, right? So that when the contractor says, I've got these 3 furnaces to put in, they at least have the ability to say, what can you tell me about heat pumps? And to me, maybe the value of going through something like Pearl or something else, the other things we find in National Green Building Standards might be just reinforcing that, oh yeah, here's somebody else talking about heat pumps. Maybe this is something I should pay attention to. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Are you saying Pearl provides that framework?
I think so. I think when you're looking to raise your score and you see the things that can raise it, you know, some of it's like, and then did you get points for your induction stove? Yeah. So like induction stoves, heat pump water heaters, all of those things.
Yeah, it basically like categorizes all the facets of your home and then asks which types of that item or aspect of your home you have, whether it's an appliance or the walls. Like literally, that's why it's hard to put into words, because it could be like part of the structure or the appliances or whatever. And then it says, okay, is your cooking appliance, are we talking about an oven and a range, or just a cooktop on a counter, or are we talking about whatever? And then is it gas, is it electric, is it induction, blah blah blah. And then you put in all the information, and then you see the score go up, or presumably it could go down if you put in like I have a 70-year-old gas, whatever.
So it's just cataloging what you have. It's not like telling you what's better.
And then there's, right. I haven't found yet the portion where it gives you the recommendation on things to do, but that's what they told us, that they have that coming.
Yeah. And is that free?
Yes,
that would be, I think.
And this is where I think having an energy navigator who, like a real human being and not just an app, who can say to you, like, we got your score in and here are the next recommended actions. To me, that may be where the better nudge is, and why I'm sort of interested in not just saying, let's do Pearl, cool, leave it at that, but like to have someone actually interact with an Iowa City resident, like an Iowa City resident interacting with another Iowa City resident, saying,
that sounds great.
Yeah. But
you could also just take Pearl out of it and do that.
That is true.
I mean, is it AmeriCorps? I mean, I had somebody come to my house and do the blower door test, and they were like, here are 5 ways you could improve your home.
We could, and we do. The difference here, I think, is that again, that tool for the realtors. Because we also have provided trainings for realtors on here's what AmeriCorps does, here are what the scores are, and it just doesn't seem to get used. And I don't know if this will either. I do want to be very clear. If you all say Pearl is not the way to go, we will not pursue it. That can be the end of the conversation. I do not have any special relationship with this company or investment in this idea. In some ways, we're starting here because our realtors have been talking about it for several years now. And we have this connection to the trainer whom you all met that makes it kind of an easy place to experiment with. But that doesn't mean it has to be the way we have to go.
So the realtors have been talking about Pearl or about a tool like Pearl?
They've been talking about Pearl and they've been talking about hers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of a gap here in that Pearl's only useful if you're renovating your home to plan to sell it, versus there's homeowners who aren't planning on selling their home, but they're planning on doing renovations. And I think what you mentioned, maybe not having the Pearl part of it, but having avenues to explore renovations that you're already planning on doing to your home to make them more eco-friendly without getting the score involved. I think there's a market for that as well, and I don't know how to incorporate it in all of that, but I think there's just a gap here for people who just want to do renovations but aren't planning on selling their home anytime soon.
If realtors are the ones bringing up Pearl, then that adds value to the argument that it would serve a purpose, because these are experts who are asking about Pearl, having Pearl as a tool. So that kind of shifts in my mind that this might be a better thing to do. But also, what is the cost? For Pearl, they will charge, correct? I mean, you don't have to have pay anything to look up your score, do you? But if you want to have more involvement with them, what are they going to charge you? That then becomes something that needs to be found out before we can move forward. So I think it's something that we go ahead and revisit at a later date when we have more information. And from our Mintat.
The only portion that they charge you for is when you go to sell, if you want the like marketing package to give to your realtor, you can purchase that from them, that like puts all of the renovations that you've documented into a nice package and pretty pictures and diagrams and whatever. And I think it was just over $100, like $120 or something like that. I forget exactly. So that's just part of it.
If we had a firmer number,
Yeah,
that would be, because we have to look out for
that's just on the website.
our
Yeah.
citizens.
So here's what I'm hearing we want. We want to get a firm number on what residents would pay for the marketing package, or that the realtors would pay. We want to hear what Tom finds in his research about the methodologies.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Competitors, did you?
Continue looking at competitors.
Just as a note, I guess, to your point, Catherine, about there's two different problems on the table here. This one solves the realtor problem, I think, pretty handily, potentially, or something like it. But then there's the other part of the conversation, which is it opens up a whole other domain of, if you want to introduce rigorous energy efficiency standards like passive house or that sort of thing. That's like a different conversation, I guess. And I don't know, just to thread that in there.
Yeah, my hope is that that's where the energy navigator would come in. Like if we've got someone who can have those conversations, like, I mean, part of the other problem is, and I don't think we're gonna solve for everything with just one problem. Like, we don't know when people are making these upgrades in their homes if they are just doing it on their own, right? They have no reason to reach out to, I mean, they do pull a permit, but we don't have a way of engaging them when they're thinking about it or thinking through it. But if we had someone who could have those conversations when they are approached, I don't know. I don't think it's just a tool or just a navigator. I think it's a navigator and a tool, or maybe navigator and several tools.
Like a resident, like was mentioned, or okay, not like a city employee who's like, I'm the guru on all green codes and all that.
Well, so
because that would be you, right?
You're really digging into how the sausage is made here. I think to start, because our staff does not currently have the capacity to do this, I would try to hire someone on contract to serve this role. If it proves to be really valuable and really popular, then it gets easier for me to make the argument to say, hey, we should add an additional staff member to do this, or we should take something off of the plate of one of our staff members and get them the training so that they could serve, they could serve in this role for the community. I will say, for me, and this is just me, sometimes I find these things easier to navigate just diving in. Like I think you can talk theory a lot and like how do we hit all these things, but sometimes it's just easier to start moving and then say that worked or that didn't work or here's how we can tweak it or what have you, because you're never going to come up with a perfect program all at once, right? I don't know. I want to be very clear, I'm not trying to sell you on Pearl. What I think for me, what I'm trying to solve or figure out in this is like, who's the person to do it? What's the tool or framework we equip them with? How do we like get it out into the community, right? And we could have different answers for all those things, but that's what we got to figure out.
So the action here with all of our discussion around this would be that, what you're talking about, like in terms of what, if we were to adopt Pearl, it's having somebody be the ambassador of that.
Yeah, and I don't think we would just adopt Pearl. I think we would give them, we'd give them our worksheet as well to fill in, and we're feeling our way through it, I would say. I will also say I don't think we've cracked this code yet. We have been thinking about it a lot, year after year, and it's clear, like just going on the steam of our own worksheet and our own workshops is not getting us to where we want to be. So it's appropriate to think of something else we could do. And I do also want to be clear, John, when I say that the realtors bring it up, to be perfectly clear, they bring it up after going through the training and saying, that seems like a good tool. Can we learn more about that? They're not spontaneously coming to us and saying, we keep hearing about Pearl.
But their reaction after the training is, which is still, yeah, I understand.
I just want to be clear on that so that
no, you're being very fair and just on weighing things. Alex, you brought up about AmeriCorps, and the work that they can do, just coming to random doors or here going from house to house, and talking about insulation, right?
And air leakage.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a way to write more grants about that, I know that's a side. Okay, we're moving away from, but that's something to keep, that's also very important because, to me, insulation is the number one way to adapt for climate change, and next year will be a doozy as we go into an El Nino. This fall. The following year is when it really slams. So, and it's gonna, so that's number one for energy saving and keeping utilities bills low for residents in my book. So.
Do you want to tell us how many air changes per hour you got?
I can't remember. We have like this pine paneling in our bedroom, and it was so leaky. It was terrible. Like you could feel the air rushing out. So that was not good.
Don't have to worry about radon then.
Okay, so we'll try to get you some of that information for our next meeting and we'll report back. Thank you all for this discussion. It's very helpful. Because I think all the questions you have are all the questions residents are gonna have, right? Yeah.
Sorry, that mentioning AmeriCorps actually did bring up, I mean, that could be another good way to whatever program we end up adopting, they could also in parallel with the energy audits, then they also could train people on putting that into whatever system that looks like. So,
or if we get a really good energy navigator, they go out and they're one more person who can do those blower door tests.
Did you say the utilities used to have navigators to help people? So there's an older program that maybe could be revised, or how, where did the navigator come from? Can you talk more about that program?
I don't think they use the term navigator. I can't remember what they use, but they used to have someone they would send to your house who would do a full assessment, similar to what the AmeriCorps team does. And then they would alert you to things you could do in your home, and they would tell you about rebates that you could apply for, and actually would follow up several months later to be like, by the way, here are people who still do insulation, which was really nice. I don't think that program's going to come back anytime soon. This is actually how the city stepped into the role of hosting AmeriCorps to do this work, because when the utilities stopped doing it, we wanted to fill that void.
Biden's bill actually help consumers to purchase energy audits, which are like 300. There was grant money there for that, but that was clawed back due to the Trumpers. So that could be on the horizon in the future, we hope again.
Well, should we transition to talking about the HERS grant memo?
Yeah, I believe so.
It's getting short shrift again. In the meeting packet for last month, we included, you may recall, the commission asked us to produce a little report on the HERS grant, which we did. And we didn't get a chance to discuss it last meeting. We're down to the last 10 minutes of this meeting, so I'll just pull out some high-level points that I want to make sure caught everyone's attention in it as we were pulling this together. So far, the HERS program, this program's run for about 1.5 years now for the city. In that time, we've given awards to 11 different local builders and 39 separate properties. 39 doesn't sound like a lot, but last year it was 1 out of every 3 new homes that were built in Iowa City. When we calculate out using the energy savings that are shown on the HERS certificates, and we included a complete HERS certificate in here as an example, our thanks to Habitat for Humanity. When I reached out to them, I said, I need an example HERS certificate. Would you mind if we used yours? They said, oh yes, of course, anything for the city. So, but you can see on the score, it shows you what your annual savings are. We took those annual savings and just counted them up for all the homes that received it so far. And then we multiplied it by 5 years. So let's say we know you're going to save this amount of energy year after year after year. What that calculation yielded was a ratio of basically $7 of savings over the first 5 years of occupancy per residence for every $1 that the city spent on the program, which is a pretty good return. One of the things in particular I think that prompted you all to ask for this report was asking like where does it fit in terms of the pricing of houses in general coming on the market, and that's where the box and whisker graph, I guess I could scroll down to this and make it easier for all of us. Sorry. Basically when we ran that calculation we found that the average, here it is. So the average price for HERS score home falls in this blue box. And the general bounds are the whiskers here. And then there are a few outliers, like these really low points. That's like the student build home, which doesn't sell at a market rate. And then there are some folks who just had incredibly pricey homes that were so far out as to not be included on the tail. But I will say one of the reasons we presented it this way is both to show that the median price for the HERS scores homes seems to be aligning pretty well with the median price for homes in Iowa City. But also that and this to me is more significant, the HERS score works at every price point for homes. Like you can have a very high, more than $1 million home, you're going to get a HERS score that works for it. The same for homes that are being sold for less than market value. And I think that's significant and notable. The other thing I wanted to pull out in this is that sometimes, when we see that the HERS award goes to a home that costs something like $1 million, you get kind of like me, might have some feelings about us giving money to such high-end properties. But when we calculated it out, it ended up to be less than 0.3% of the home value of the home in terms of what the city is contributing to that build, which I think at that point is fair to say we are not in any meaningful way subsidizing these homes. What we are doing is a true incentive just to try to get builders on board to doing this kind of work. Based on this, in terms of next steps, as you might, I don't know, who was here when we first proposed this program? Maybe just Zach and Mike? All right, well, you may not know.
I don't think so.
All right. When we first proposed the program, we said there would be 3 benchmarks for success. One would be the cross promotion of the program between the city, the Home Builders Association, and the Realtors Association. One would be that a third or more of new residential construction receives a HERS rating, and one would be, or we would reassess at that time whether 52 is the right score, because we weren't quite sure where to set the price point or the point for the incentive. I will tell you openly, surprised and delighted that we've hit some of those benchmarks so early. As of last year, 2 out of these 3 we achieved. A third or more are receiving the HERS rating, and we've had very successful partnerships with the HBA and ICAR in promoting it, which means it is reasonable at this time to reassess whether 52 is the right number to be assigning to it. I would say based on what we're seeing in the data that we've collected, 52 seems attainable, but is still a reasonable stretch goal. I mean, we still have 2/3 of the homes that aren't yet participating in it. And based on that, staff's recommendation would be that we continue to keep it at 52, in part because we're still in the first 3-year launch of the program, so it's keeping it consistent, but that we would reevaluate when we get to a 50% participation rate, if that sounds reasonable to you all.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you ever get builders who are trying to do this, but they just can't get to a score of 52?
We have had at least one builder I know of that tried to get to a 52 and didn't get it on the first attempt. And this to me is the real value of the program. He then worked with the energy rater to work out like what are things I can do to get us there. And based on that, he implemented those and then was able to achieve a 52 the next time he built a home. And every home he's built after that has achieved the score, which has been great. And he's been serving as a mentor to a young builder in the community, has now got that younger builder participating in it, which is really great. We also spoke with another builder in the program who had sat down and developed a spreadsheet to figure out how they could most cost effectively achieve a 52, which sounds maybe a little cynical, but when they ran all the numbers, they figured out the best way that they could do it based on the construction techniques they were using was to just make it standard practice to put a heat pump in every new home they got. Wow. So in that way, this has incentivized, getting heat pumps, which I think is also a great outcome for the program. It's interesting because I think like all the great outcomes don't necessarily get captured, in the 52 number itself. It gets captured in things like that. I will say, just because I worked hard on making this graph, the other graph that's really interesting to me and something that I want to keep an eye on is one of the things we've noticed in the data we've been collecting through the 52 is that, or through the HERS scores, is that at a certain point, you can build a really big house and it can get a 52, but you're still going to be consuming a lot of energy, which you probably don't need a fancy graph to tell you. At the end of the day, if you have more space to heat, it's going to take more energy to do it, no matter how efficiently you get. You can't efficiency your way out of big homes, right? Smaller homes tend to correlate with lower energy usage, regardless of what their score is on HERS. And part of what got us thinking about developing this graph is that we would see homes come in that would have identical HERS scores, but different energy savings. And we were trying to figure out what accounts for the difference. Like, why are some scoring better than others or worse than others, but having more energy savings? And it really came down to home size, which brings this whole meeting full circle, because if we go back to what Anne was saying about the form-based code and increasing density size, there are a lot of smaller, denser homes being put in that neighborhood, which will correlate to less energy usage overall. Thank you so much for coming, Tom. I didn't invite him, but so yeah, I think things that we're doing in our zoning regulations to encourage that more dense and smaller growth are running parallel to the things we're doing with HERS to try to get people to build more efficiently. Were there anything in the report that stuck out to you that you wanted to ask or talk about? I know I'm taking us through it pretty quickly. let me ask this a different way. Having heard what you've heard, knowing it's 5:30, would you like us to carry this item over to another meeting, or do you feel sufficiently empowered to email me with any remaining questions you might have?
I think it's a great program. I don't have any questions.
I think I'm good. On mine, just to put it a different way, nobody has said like, oh no, it's not worth it to do this HERS thing, right? Like,
I haven't heard it. But of course, you know, we do touch in with our partners regularly.
Sure.
Are you all right setting the 50% benchmark for the next time we reassess? All right,
Okay,
you wanna take us?
great. Yeah. So I think that covers it. Then our next meeting, back up to the top here, is May 4th. So first Monday as usual. No public comment this time since Tom left. So wrapping up action items. I think we had a few on the Pearl.
Yeah, we'll
And we
follow up
covered
on
those. Yeah. Okie doke. All right. So we are at 5:31. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Clayton motions.
Shetty seconds.
Great. Any opposed? All right. Thank you all for coming again.
Thanks for the excellent discussion today, folks. Very helpful.
See y'all next month.
I totally forgot to do the sheet.
Oh, that's